Hope you can relate to this topic. I know for sure I can. Always have lots of stories and lots of experiences to share around this one, personally and also in terms of watching others. And I think one of the things that I want to start off as you're hopping in here live and joining me, if you're catching it live, say hello. If you're catching me in the replay, always happy to hear your thoughts and your comments and your observations and whether or not this is something that is a challenge for you, something that you are looking forward to kind of trying to put into action as we do kind of the final slide in towards the holiday season this year. For those of you who don't know me that are new to the group, my name is Heather Dranitsaris-Hilliard, and I am one of the facilitators here inside of the group. And my background is all about helping people to achieve their potential. Myself and my business partner, Ann Dranitsaris, this is the place and the space that we love to work in the most. We help organizations, individuals, teams, leaders across the gamut, teenagers, people going through career changes, you name it. We have a lot of experience in this space of really helping people to be able to understand their potential and then know exactly what it is they need to do, the exact steps, the exact roadmap to move towards achieving that potential. When we talk about emotional self-management, we always have to start off with a little bit of a conversation and a thinking process around, what is it? What is it that drives some of that impulsive behavior that we can find ourselves getting caught in during the holiday season, right? Can you relate to that? I know I can, right? It's like there's some switch that goes off in my brain that says, oh, it's the holidays, it's okay, and I can just do it now and then I'll catch up later, or we can deal with it, and it's like, but it's the holidays, right? Oh, but it's the weekend. I mean, it doesn't even have to be the holidays. We can recognize ourselves when we have shifted into running off of our impulses. And we end up saying yes to things, really easily saying yes to things that we don't normally say yes to, or that we know, objectively, we know that it's not in our best interest, it's not what we might be doing normally, but there we go, right? We might be spending too much, eating too much, drinking too much, all of which is like we know is not good for us in the long run, but whatever it is that's going on for us right now, there we are at the mercy of our impulses, right? Can anybody relate? I know I put my hand up to this one, right? So why is this? Really understanding why helps us to kind of course correct. It is actually the fault of our brain. We're going to blame our brains for this one, right? It's all in our heads. And because our brain has a choice, right, when it comes to making decisions. And our brain can either make decisions from our rational brain, right, or from our emotional brain, and which is way back here. And each of these brains has a very, very different decision-making function. So the decisions that are made within these two places in our brain, the rational brain at the front or the emotional brain at the back, and so it comes at reasoning in two very, very distinct ways. Our rational brain decides based on logic, objective information. It considers the consequences of our actions. It thinks about our goals. It's a little more future focused, and really is taking in the information and making the decision on all of those aspects, right? Logic, objective rationale, consideration of consequences, that's the rational brain. Our emotional brain, though, on the other hand, that function, when we're making decisions out of the emotional brain, it decides based on feelings, emotions, impulses, and a desire for instant gratification, right? I want it, I'm going to give it to myself, I'm going to say yes, right? Now, the way these two brains are meant to work is they're actually supposed to talk to each other. They're supposed to talk to each other, and they're supposed to negotiate. So the rational brain is supposed to negotiate with our emotional brain to make sure that they are on the same page. So that while I feel like doing this, and that's the impulse I have for immediate gratification, the rational brain says, yeah, but you've been working really hard, you've lost that weight, or this isn't good for you, you're not going to feel great the next day, whatever it might be, or that's too much, you set a budget, you need to stay within it. You can hear, right? Sometimes, can you relate to that? Those two conversations that go on in your head. It's like, yeah, but, and it's like, so that again, that characterization, right, of on the one hand, your rational brain really trying to look at it logically, rationally, do the right thing, what's right for you, contemplate consequences, think about it in the context of the bigger picture and the longer term, right? Not just in this moment, but longer term. And the emotional brain going, yeah, but it would feel really good and I'd really like it and I want to really make sure it's special and I I feel like I need this because I haven't been doing this, and we get into this emotional reasoning that can sound logical, but we know it's just ourselves giving permission to give into the impulse and to have that kind of immediate gratification. So when we don't have that communication, when these two brains are not working in conjunction and able to talk to each other effectively, guess which brain wins out? Well, it's the emotional brain. And it's the emotional brain because the emotional brain is far more developed, right? And because it's far more developed, and of course our brain likes to do whatever is quick and easy, which is usually going after what the emotional brain is the deciding, becomes the one who wins out in terms of deciding, right? So let me talk about what, what makes the holiday season such a unique context for us. So I don't know about the rest of you, but as I head into the holidays every year, there's usually been a long period since we've had holidays. I know our kind of November, late October, November, December, usually really, really, really busy months for us. And so we've been working a lot. It's getting darker. You're not out as much. You're not out in sunshine. Where we live, it's cold. It's -17 today with the wind chill. So you're kind of hunkered in. And there's not a lot going on that's really excited. And so this is, a period typically of more stress, overwork, being tired, not having the other things to kind of distract us and make us feel how we want to feel or to have the experiences that we want to have. And so all of these things come on, then there's the pressure of the family and the family dynamic and anything else that might be going on that's going to trigger us into our self-protective system. The holiday season for many is a time of heightened stress, right? And so what ends up happening, and we end up allowing our emotions to take charge, and we're using those emotions and our emotional brain to interpret our reality. And so there we start creating these stories that we tell ourselves out of our emotional brain and again, we're stressed, we're triggered, we're in our self-protective persona, and all of that is taking over, and we end up simply surviving the holidays. Do you ever have that experience, right? Where you go into it. I know for me, I love Christmas, right? I love this time of year. I love this season. There's so much about it that I really enjoy, and I try to stay really focused and really present. But even in that, I realize that sort of getting disconnected, not staying grounded, and then not necessarily having the experience that I want to be able to have, right? And because there are always other factors at play. There's, in-laws and siblings and, family dynamics and dynamics with children. And for me, I've always appreciated the kind of the time, the celebration, the fun, but also I like the going, I'm, my performer style, right? I like to go out and create a certain kind of experience so people have a certain kind of feeling, but I can go too far, especially when I'm tired or getting triggered, and then I'm not really taking care of myself in it, right? And so I'm just pushing on both ends, and I'm not getting help that I need. I'm not asking for help. I take on too much. That's me when I know I'm in survival mode, trying to get through the holidays. And when you start thinking of, well, it's just a few more days and then I'll be over and then I can relax, we know again we're not coming at this in a way where we're creating the experiences we want, which what I talked about a couple of weeks ago. And when we shift into that survival mode or that self-protective mode, it is our emotional brain that's making the decisions, right? And so we will allow our emotional brains to really, and our emotional reactions in that situation is really start to create that fuzzy logic, right? And we start to convince ourselves we can do whatever we want because after all, we can start fresh in January. How many of you say that to yourselves, right? It's like, okay, well, it's just a couple weeks. I'll start fresh in January. I won't worry about it now. It's just too much, right? That's the emotional fuzzy logic or the emotional reasoning of the emotional brain. So we know we're down, we're back. We sometimes refer to it as the ass of our brain because when we're making decisions out of it, you can see how our behavior might go, right? So again, when we have that conversation with ourselves, when we tell ourselves things like that, we make up those kinds of stories, it actually paves the way for sure to impulsive eating and drinking and spending money and getting triggered by family and friends in the same way we might have in past years. And it doesn't allow us, and this is the most important thing, it doesn't allow us to create the holiday we want to have. It doesn't allow us to stay focused on what is really, truly most important, and we get kind of caught up in that impulsive tidal wave, right, of instant gratification. I want to do what I want to do. I want to do what I feel like doing. I don't want to do what I need to do. I just want to focus on what I feel like, right? And this is why it's so important for us, especially as we head into the holidays, that we really know what's in our best interest, right? And that we know and we stick with that from that perspective of, really thinking about what is it? Because using our rational brain, so I'm just going to skip around a bit, using our rational brain, it's a logical process, as I said, right? But it actually requires cognitive effort. So there's more work, right? We really have to think about it. We have to think about it, and then we have to hold ourselves to it. Whereas emotional reasoning, it's automatic. It just happens. Think about our automatic negative thoughts. It kind of flies that same way. It's there. It's always running in the background. It gets triggered and really easily. And again, our brain goes with whatever's going to take the least amount of effort. So managing our stress, knowing our triggers, recognizing our stories are all really important things. Catching ourselves when we're using emotional reasoning is really, really important if we're actually going to kind of move beyond this and be able to manage our emotions through the holidays. So let me give you just a few examples. I've talked about a couple of them as I've gone along. Examples of emotional reasoning, right? I'm so full, I really shouldn't have any dessert, but and I worked so hard to lose the 15 pounds, but this just looks good. I'll just have a few bites. I'll just sample it, and then there'll be less calories, right? So see how we're talking ourselves around it as opposed to staying objective, which is, I don't need more food. I'm full, I'm done, and it's not my intention to overeat or to take in calories that I don't need, especially in light of the goals that I've been achieving, right? Or I feel guilty because I didn't spend as much money as I did in previous years, so I should go buy more. I don't have enough gifts, or I don't have the right number of gifts for people. Whatever is the story we tell ourselves, right? It can be around drinking. It can be about, going out. It's like, I must, I haven't seen them, or I haven't seen these people, or, how am I going to see these people? And this, in our COVID times, of course, we don't have that. But oftentimes people get really overextended because we do this like marathon of having to see everybody that we haven't seen all year. But because it's the holiday season, we have to make sure that we have these touch points. And then again, we get so diluted in that and triggered that we go into surviving, and we end up drinking and eating and not coming out of the holidays at the end. I was just to say that I knew that I was doing my holidays in a really self-protected way, as if I came out of my actual time off work between Christmas and New Year's feeling more tired than I did heading into it, right? Because I wasn't using my vacation time to restore myself, having come off of a couple of months of a heavy workload, as I said. Now, everybody uses emotional reasoning. We all do it. We have clients who do it when they're making business decisions. So it's normal and it's natural. So it's really, really important that you start to understand the emotional reasoning that gets triggered in you. What's the story you tell yourself? How do you start to recognize the distinction between you using emotional reasoning and making decisions from your emotional brain versus you sticking with your rational brain and really being objective and logical about it? Now, I would say one of the ways that I think about it is if I make this decision, if I go with the decision that I'm thinking of going with, does that help me to achieve my objectives? Does that align with my intent? Does that leave me better off than where I am, right? So there's something, again, that more sort of critical thinking around what's my goal, what's my intention, what do I want to have in terms of my experience. If you find yourself, right, because the thing is that when we use emotional reasoning, like part of it is because we're tricking ourselves to believe that we can do whatever we feel like doing, which of course we can't. But it also helps us to diminish difficult emotions. So there's a self-soothing component to it. So if we're feeling anxious or guilt or loneliness or tired, right, it's a way in which we sometimes will give in order to take care of ourselves, but we're really not actually doing that. But if you recognize that your emotions are hijacking your rational brain, and dictating your thoughts and your actions, because that's the most important thing, is like we can trigger the thought, but we need to make the decision. And are you making the decision back here, or are you making the decision up from your rational brain? So some of the things I want you to think about, and this is what I'm going to leave you off with today, and I know Anne's been talking about this over the course of the week as well, right? know how you manipulate yourself. Know your stories, right? Really know your stories, and ask yourself, you know, as you're hearing that story, is this a fact or is it a story I've created in my mind, right? And the story could be about interpreting other people's behavior, the story about what you can do and not do and whether or not there will be consequences. You know, check in on that story, but know your stories. I know for me, and I've heard this from my clients over and over again, it's the same stories that our emotional brain pulls out over and over again. So it's not like I'm creating new stories every Christmas. It's the same stories. It's the same behavioral pattern that I'm always working up against in order to stay out of my self-protective system of my brain, which has my decision-making being done out of the emotional brain, and really being able to stay kind of focused and intentional as I move towards my potential. Recognizing that, you know, the when you're being hijacked by emotions, to just kind of take a step back, right? Think about what would you tell a friend or a family member if you were feeling the same, and try and do that for yourself, right? It's like, how do you give yourself some compassion? How do you give yourself that support? How do you give yourself that attention in the same way that you would to a friend, right? So part of our inner dialogue, especially when we're operating out of our emotional brain, and is some of those automatic negative thoughts, right? And having to separate, again, as I said earlier, sort of fact from feeling, right? Just because you are saying you feel stupid or you feel inadequate doesn't mean you are, right? Those value judgments that come out of the emotional brain. So catch yourself when you're saying things that are devaluing or judgmental about yourself or even about others, and give yourself a pep talk instead. I know one of the things that I've learned to do around this over the years is that when I catch myself sort of going into that place of judgment, is shifting to focus on something that I really value and appreciate, right? So that I can move myself out of it. Because again, using those devaluing judgments is just an indication, it's just a signal that you are operating out of your emotional brain and you want to make that switch. What's your intention with that relationship? What's your intention with that friendship? What's your intention in terms of where you want to go? And so that you're moving out of that moment and you're connecting back up into your rational brain, okay? So feeling is a way of processing information. So our emotional brain is giving us information, but again, it's really important to interpret that meaning. And just because you're feeling something, it actually doesn't mean you have to pay attention to it, right? So it's like people who go around talking about how tired they are all the time, right? It's like, that's a feeling, but you don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to share it and communicate it and reinforce it and focus on it. And instead, it's really looking at things in a little bit of a different way, and being able to distinguish between what it is that you are thinking and how those thoughts move you in the direction of your intent and of your potential and ultimately your power, versus what it is that you're feeling. So we're starting to see me doing that sort of shifting back and forth, right? Sometimes I feel like that, you know, sort of that ping pong in conversation that goes on in our heads. So this is all normal, right? And controlling our impulses for sure can be difficult at the best of times, okay? But during the holiday season, it is particularly challenging. We have so much going on, and this year even more so, right? Sort of those feelings that people are talking about around hopelessness and of, you know, feeling disconnected and loneliness and not having things that we're looking forward to. There's all kinds of mixed emotions that are going on around here. So it's really important that you set yourself the goal over the next couple of weeks to really stay present with your executive function or your rational brain, right? Let your executive function, let your rational brain take charge, not your emotional brain. Stay planful. Have a plan. What's your plan for the day? What's your plan for this activity, this meal, this experience, right? What is the plan? And we go into things with that plan, with that intention, and we keep making our decisions in accordance with that plan. That helps us to stay out of the impulsive, you know, emotional brain that it's all about immediate gratification, and able to come out of the holidays having had the experience that we want to have, and not waiting until the new year. This is a phenomenal time of year to be thinking about, what do we want for next year? And not just waiting till, you know, the calendar magically rolls over, but really starting to lay some of that foundation. And so if you're thinking that, well, I want to lose weight in January, it's like, now's the time to start, right? And now's the time to start moving in the direction of your potential. If you're thinking about a career change, now's the time to start. What do I need to know? Who am I going to talk to? How am I going to do, you know, find out more about what career is best for me or what environment is best for me? There's all these resources that are out there. Now's the time to be thinking about, how do you give yourself the gift of having the experience you want through the holidays, but also setting yourself up so that next year is your best and your brightest ever, and then that is the year that you work and really see your progress towards achieving your full potential. And that's what we're all about. We've got some exciting things happening in the new year. We're going to take a little bit of a pause from the live sessions over the next couple of weeks as we slide into the holidays, part of that, looking at some self-care. But also we've got some really exciting things in the work that we're focused on to kick us off in the new year, and we can't wait to have you as part of our continued journey towards powering up to achieve our innate potential. Until then, we will see you kind of off and on throughout the next couple of weeks, and back live and ready to go. New year, new you. Can't wait to see you all then.